Hi, everybody. Welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. I'm a little bit sad today. We're going to be talking about Israel365 News. I've had a really good relationship with them. We come to their website every now and again, and we usually check in with this section called Biblical News because this is a Second Coming channel. We're watching for signs of the times. We're looking for prophecy to be fulfilled. And a very important part of that is the Jews. And anytime that they see something that they may consider a sign, I think that it probably is. I think the Lord is working with all peoples in their own language in a way that they understand to prepare them for that day. And I've been able to interview a number of them. We mostly talked to Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz. He's the one that writes most of the articles that I'm interested in. We've also talked to Elie Michel. They set me up with Rabbi Gurfein, and I was talking to him for the better part of 2 years. All of them are in Israel, and so it's been an amazing relationship and a really good opportunity, and I've learned so much. And I love and appreciate them, but there's an article that I wasn't too big of a fan of, but we're going to look at it from both points of view. So if you scroll down right now, I'm recording this on the 26th, you get down to this section called Terror Watch. And there's an article titled Mormon Charities Funneled $140 Million to Hamas-linked Islamic NGOs, Investigation Reveals. Okay, so first, we're going to look at this from their point of view. If I was with Israel365 News, if I was an Israeli, if I was Jewish, you might come across this investigation that the article is referring to and be a little bit upset. You might think, okay, why are you guys giving all this charity money to these entities that are hostile toward Israel? That's very understandable. I completely understand that. I do think that the article is missing some key bits of information, and I do think it's a little bit misguided, and I'll explain why. So I can only assume that Israel365 has one of two views, maybe both, I don't know. Either one, that our church is knowingly supporting organizations that have associations with terrorist groups, and so we have some kind of malicious plan or something against Israel and Jews, which I can tell you is not the case. This is a picture of one of our apostles. This is Elder Neil L. Anderson. And this was in Argentina. Our church has a lot of contact with Jews throughout the world, including Israel. And it should be pretty well known, if you know our church at all, that we love the Jews. And we also love the scriptures and prophecy. And Israel is supposed to exist right now. It is. We're going to talk more about that later. So I hope that the conclusion is that they don't think that we're against Israel or against Jews, because that just doesn't really make any sense. The other conclusion might be that the church isn't being careful with where it's giving charity money, which I guess that's more plausible, but I don't think that that's the case. Let's just go ahead and get into the article. Starts off with a picture of the BYU Jerusalem Center on Mount Scopus, and it says, an explosive investigation by the Middle East Forum has uncovered that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and affiliated Mormon charities transferred at least $140.6 million to Islamic organizations with extensively documented ties to Hamas, the Muslim Brotherhood, and other designated terrorist groups, making them among the largest American benefactors of Islamist extremism. I will say, I don't have the time, at least not right now, to go and verify all these claims. That's what I like to do where possible. I don't know if I have the skill set. I don't know if I have the access to verify what's being said here. But what I do know is that when you're talking about organizations involve many people. You think about any government, company, school, military unit, they're made up of a lot of people. And if you have an individual or if you have a group, it doesn't necessarily reflect the entire organization. So if you work at UPS and you're the CEO and you have a hub where packages are being sorted and sent out, and you have a bad manager that has ulterior motives, that is doing this or that, or if you have somebody in the company that is embezzling money, that doesn't mean that you, as the CEO, are a criminal or bad, or that you even knew about it. So that's one of the big questions that I have here. Maybe at some point I'll try and dig into this and see what I can do and what I can verify. But just because it's written in an article doesn't make it true. And I know that Adam is a good journalist. Maybe he verified each and every claim here, but he does reference this investigation, and he goes into all the different details. And I don't know. I don't know if he's just kind of parroting what they're saying, if he did his own investigative research. One thing that I don't see in the article is a chance for our church to officially respond to these claims. So at the moment, it looks like it's kind of one-sided, and hopefully there's some kind of follow-up, because this makes the church look really bad. And I think there's a lot of factors to consider, and it may not be a complete story. Whether it's the ambiguity between organizations and other organizations and people that rub shoulders between different organizations. I don't know anything about the timing, because you might have an organization that at first is reputable and not corrupt, but then over time it's infiltrated, taken over. There's a lot of things to consider. So again, I can't speak to this right now because I don't know how long it would take for me to verify all of this. But what I will say is that this think tank over here seems to have a little bit of a bias. This is called Focus on Western Islamism, and just the tone of the entire article seems pretty one-sided, which doesn't mean that it's wrong, but that's where you have to be extra careful, because you may just be getting one side of the story. Okay, so this whole thing is about charities, right? I do want to point out, I've been, talking to Israel365 since almost the beginning of my channel, and I would hope that they would remember that for, again, probably the better part of 1, maybe 2 years, I supported their charities. If you went to any video, this is from July 31st, 2023. So probably check any video from 2023, 2022. If you go to the description box and come down here, there were multiple charities that I was supporting. And of course, I don't represent the church officially, but I think I'm a pretty good example of what most members of the church would do and what we believe and our attitudes toward the Jews and Israel. But we were doing charities like this one for Meir Tamari, a 32-year-old husband and father of 2, ages 1 and 2.5, murdered on his way home in the heartland of Israel. Please help his widow and family. Then we had this one with the planting of trees in Israel, and then a third one for helping Ukrainian orphans. And these are like Jewish orphans that are orphaned because of the war in Ukraine. Again, I've had interviews. This is Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz. This was the last one that we had. This was May 1st of last year. We were talking about the red heifers, and then toward the end of the video, we were having a really good conversation about what he called signposts, or just signs of the times. It was really good. This is Elie Michel. He wanted to come on the show to talk about the war that had just started on October 7th of 2023. And we had a discussion, and he shared the way that he experienced it. And so it was kind of a thing to gain support for Israel. So I was happy to have him on. I don't think that anybody supports At least nobody that has a heart and a brain and a soul supports what happened on October 7th. But we went ahead and had them on and considered what happened. They, like I said before, they set me up with Rabbi Gurfein. He lives in West Jerusalem, and he taught us so much about Judaism. And it could have gone on forever, but it practically it couldn't. But I still have so many questions, and I hope I have another opportunity like that in the future. And then, we've spoken to other Jews too. These are not Jews with Israel365, but you have Samantha Siegel. She's credited as being the first one to discover that there are fish now that are really close to the Dead Sea because the climate over there is changing. There's starting to be more fresh water. And so fish are now appearing in places that they normally didn't. I did this interview with Dr. Henry Abramson. He's in the United States, but he had a lot to teach me about Judaism as well in this interview. But, when we're talking about charities, let's make sure that this story is balanced. Okay, so on this website, this is ifmda.org.il. A special thank you to the LDS Charities and the BYU Jerusalem Center for their donation and partnership in saving lives in Israel. Let's just read a little bit about this. Looks like one of our faculty members is receiving a award or something like that. During 2020, following the spreading of the COVID-19 in Israel and the increase in the number of infected Israelis, Magen David Adom activated an emergency contingency plan to add 3,000 medics who will be equipped with professional med kits. The LDS Charities are one of the generous donors thanks to whom we purchased 75 med kits to equip MDA teams Israel-wide in vital medical equipment and saving life to provide immediate and professional response during routine and medical emergency events for all the Israeli citizens. I think this was probably auto-translated, which is why it reads a little funny. But they're being recognized here. The church is being recognized at the BYU Jerusalem Center. We also have this. This is, November 3rd, 2016. The Mormon Church pledges $200,000 to Jewish refugee resettlement group. So I don't think that the fear is founded that the church has something against Israel or Jews, or that we only support Palestinians or Muslims or anything like that. You can see it's both sides. We have this. This is Church Newsroom, and this is taking place in Toronto, December 16th, 2025. So this was recent. A groundbreaking act of interfaith cooperation. Rabbi Jared Grover of Beth Tikva Synagogue in Toronto led a 9-day humanitarian mission to Israel that brought together Jewish participants and 10 young adults from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And then here you have pictures of that group. We got this. Now, this is here in Kansas City. Not that it's a charity, but happy Rosh Hashanah to our Jewish friends. Recently, a group of local Latter-day Saints were invited by Debbie Trackman, a congregant of B'nai Jehuda, to participate in a community outreach program. Community outreach program called Abraham's Tent, referring to the ancient Jewish tradition of welcoming the stranger. And then we got this, August 19th, 2025, also pretty recent. A delegation from the American Jewish Committee, or AJC, visited Salt Lake City from August 11th through 13th to meet with leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The visit, which focused on a dialogue and bridge building, allowed the global Jewish advocacy group to deepen their understanding of the church's work. The group visited key sites in Salt Lake City and Provo, including Brigham Young University, Welfare Square, and the Humanitarian Center, where they assembled cleaning kits for disaster relief. So, just by the little bit that we've read, it seems like the church is interested in charity, humanitarian relief, and serving in the community and in all communities, including Israel. I have a spreadsheet that I'm working on, and there's still a lot of work to do on this, just like all my other spreadsheets. But I'm attempting to put together a timeline of all the times that one of our apostles have had contact with the Jewish community, whether it's in Israel, the United States, or somewhere else like Argentina. And there's been a lot. So, for example, let's go down here. And this, this goes back a ways, but let me just highlight a few. 2015 International Association of Jewish Genealogical Societies Conference. Outreach to Jews in Argentina, 2018. Semi-annual Jewish Latter-day Saint Dialogue, June of 2019. Interfaith meeting on freedom of religion of belief. This was May of 2025. And then I think we just talked about this one, the American Jewish Committee meeting. And I'm sure there's many, many more that I haven't captured, but the church has been very interested in serving, but also in Jews and in Israel. In fact, I want to highlight this. This is, to me, is just one of the most stunning pictures. Here we have two of our apostles. The recently passed away President Holland, and then Elder Cook. And here they are with Benjamin Netanyahu, as well as Joseph Lieberman. And then I can't remember his name. I think his name is like Robert Abrams. He was the New York Attorney General. And then you have others, but meeting with the Prime Minister of Israel, and also meeting with, at the time, I don't know if he's still the mayor, but at the time, the mayor of Jerusalem. They were there because on that occasion, they were dedicating the Orson Hyde Memorial Garden, which is on the Mount of Olives. And this is to commemorate an apostle from 1841 who traveled all the way from the United States, which was very difficult back then, all the way to Jerusalem with the purpose of dedicating the land for the return of the Jews. Oh, and of course this goes away. It can't just stay up. Let me see if I can get to that again. Yeah, here we go. So there's the Dome of the Rock over there and the Temple Mount. And then here's like a thing with an inscription on it in Hebrew first, and then Arabic, and then English. Just talking about that Orson Hyde was there. And it wasn't just Orson Hyde that went to dedicate the Holy Land specifically for the gathering of the Jews. So from our point of view, this is just our point of view and our theology. The reason that Israel exists is because we dedicated that land for the gathering. It was prophecy, but it needed to be dedicated in these latter days. And it wasn't just one dedication. The first one was in 1841. And I'm not sure why this is all messed up with why like the number goes down to the next line. But October 24th, 1841, Orson Hyde, in his prayer, he blessed and dedicated the land for the Jew. Then this one right here, this column is for the Jews to gather, prophecies fulfilled, confound enemies, confound enemies, soften hearts, rebuild Jerusalem. After him, in 1873, you had another apostle that went. I think his name is Albert Carrington. And then again this was the same trip. So you had three apostles, Carrington, Snow, and George A. Smith. And then we had another one, 1898, 1902. And there were like three dedications on that occasion on different days. James E. Talmage, 1927, J. Whitsoe, 1933. And then he did another one 10 days later, also in 1933. So it's been very important to us theologically that the Jews return to Israel. So it doesn't really make sense that we're trying to help terrorists against Israel. Hopefully that's clear. We're not trying to undermine the state of Israel. Let's go back to the article, and I want to address this part too. It says the Mormon Church also operates the Jerusalem Center on Mount Scopus, whose humanitarian programs raise further questions. According to James Curl, assistant to the president for the Brigham Young University Jerusalem Center, the facility maintains an ongoing and substantial humanitarian program, partnering with LDS Charities with projects mostly into Palestinian communities in East Jerusalem, the West Bank, and Gaza. The center's executive for over 15 years has been Aaron Hayat, who previously served as spokesperson for the left-wing Israeli organization Peace Now. Okay, so they're doing work in East Jerusalem. That's where the BYU Jerusalem Center is at. And then also the West Bank and Gaza. Again, I'd like to know, or I'd like to be able to talk to the church and maybe get their side of the story. Maybe it's just proximity. I mean, maybe not so much Gaza, but maybe it's just because the BYU Jerusalem Center is right there and the West Bank is just immediately to the east, like north and south. Or maybe that's where the most need is, or the most opportunities to serve, for all I know. I don't know. But I don't think that it's suspicious, like we're favoring the Palestinians over the Jews. All right, continuing. The Jerusalem Center has established strong connections to the Palestinian position, quote unquote, according to an interview with Latter-day Saint attorney Carolyn Homer, who works full-time for CAIR. Quote, the BYU Jerusalem Center makes a point, because it's technically on the Palestinian side of the border, it makes a point to have equal amounts of cultural events between Israel and Palestinians. I mean, I don't think there's anything controversial about that. In that often the BYU students come home feeling more sympathy to the Palestinian position. End quote. It remains unclear which Palestinian organizations receive funding through Jerusalem Center partnerships. So, if I understand this correctly, you have students that are members of this church, which focuses a lot on the Jews and Israel and the House of Israel and our theology as it relates to the Jews. So they may favor one side initially, and then they go to Jerusalem and they have more contact with Palestinians and get equal amounts of time between Jews and Palestinians. And then it sounds like they understand Palestinians a little bit better and see things a little bit from their point of view. I think the following quote sums it up pretty nicely. This is from, at the time, Elder Howard W. Hunter of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. He later became president of the church. This is a BYU devotional, February 4th, 1979. At the present time, we are engaged in a project of beautifying the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem by a garden in memory of Orson Hyde, an early apostle of the church, and the dedicatory prayer he offered on that site. It is not because we favor one people over another. Jerusalem is sacred to the Jews, but it is also sacred to the Arabs. And then I'm going to skip down to the next highlighted portion. Both the Jews and the Arabs are children of our Father. They are both children of promise. And as a church, we do not take sides. We have love for and an interest in each. The purpose of the gospel of Jesus Christ is to bring about love, unity, and brotherhood to the highest order. Like Nephi of old, may we be able to say, I have charity for the Jew, I also have charity for the Gentiles. From 2 Nephi chapter 33, verses 8 and 9. To our friends of Judah, we say, we are your brethren of the house of Joseph. We feel close relationship to you. We are messengers of the true covenant and bear a message that God has spoken in this day and time. To our kinsmen of Abraham, we say, we are your brethren. We look upon no nation or nationality as second-class citizens. We invite all men to investigate our message and to receive our fellowship. Later on, I'm just going to read this last sentence. Only they are favored who keep his commandments. So I think that's the spirit in which this is being said, rather than BYU students are going over there and becoming radicalized, or now they quote unquote support the Palestinian position against the Israeli position. Later on, it says LDS Charities' opacity raises additional concerns about the full extent of church funding to Islamist organizations. The confirmed $2.1 million to MedGlobal is particularly troubling. MedGlobal was founded by Zaher Salul, former president of the radical Hamas-aligned Mosque Foundation. Salul boasts of knowing LDS President Dallin H. Oaks since 2012, which was a long time ago, and publishes photos of their meetings in Salt Lake City. MedGlobal operates in close contact with the Hamas authorities in Gaza and explicitly promises donors it works with the Ministry of Health in Gaza, a Hamas-controlled entity. The organization advertises in Hamas newspapers and has partnered with Islamic Oasis, an open supporter of the Taliban regime, whose head praised the October 7th attacks. Again, I'm not an expert, but if you're a church involved in humanitarian work and you're giving out charity money and you want to help people in Gaza, then this might be your only avenue. And it kind of makes sense that this group would have to go through the Ministry of Health in Gaza because up until recently, Hamas has been in control of Gaza. I can't remember exactly when they came to power. I want to say it was in sometime in the 2010s. I'm not sure. But they've essentially been running the show. And so, again, I don't know. Maybe there's other organizations. Maybe there's a way to circumvent certain governmental bodies like this. But I don't know. But having known President Oaks back in 2012, I don't know if there's more that's come out about Zaher Salul. Just because he was the president of Mosque Foundation, does that mean that automatically he's a radical or anything like that? I don't know. The article then shares what looks like an Instagram post of President Oaks with this guy. It's actually kind of interesting because somewhat recently we were reading a general conference talk from President Oaks. This is the October 2022 general conference. And President Oaks mentioned this man in his talk. So the name of the talk is Helping the Poor and Distressed. At this time, he was first counselor in the first presidency. And it says, 10 years ago, the Kandaris, a Sikh husband and wife in the United Arab Emirates, personally launched a remarkable effort to feed the hungry. Through the Guru Nanak Darbar Sikh temple, they are currently serving over 30,000 vegetarian meals every weekend to anyone who enters their doors, regardless of religion or race. Dr. Kandari explains, quote, "We believe that all are one, we are children of one God, and we are here to serve humanity," end quote. The provision of medical and dental care to those in need is another example. In Chicago, I met Syrian-American critical care physician Dr. Zaher Salul. He is one of the founders of MedGlobal, which organizes medical professionals to volunteer their time, skills, knowledge, and leadership to help others in crises, such as the Syrian war, where Dr. Salul risked his life in giving medical care to civilians. MedGlobal and similar organizations, including many Latter-day Saint professionals, demonstrate that God is moving professionals of faith to bring the poor needed relief worldwide. So it's not like this was a secret. Now, I don't know if things changed after the war started. Again, this is October 2022. I don't know what was known about Dr. Zaher Salul or what President Oaks knew or didn't know at that time. Things may have changed after the war started. But I do want to point out, earlier in the talk, he says, despite all that our church does directly, most humanitarian service to the children of God worldwide is carried out by persons and organizations having no formal connection with our church. As one of our apostles observed, quote, "God is using more than one people for the accomplishment of his great and marvelous work. It is too vast, too arduous for any one people," end quote. As members of the restored church, we need to be more aware and more appreciative of the service of others. And then I'm going to skip a paragraph. We have also had fruitful collaborations with other organizations, including Muslim Aid, Water for People, and Israel, which I looked them up just to be sure. And just like it sounds, Israel is an international non-governmental humanitarian aid organization based in Israel. Since we were founded in 2001, our teams have worked in emergency and long-term development settings in more than 60 countries around the world. While each humanitarian organization has its own areas of specialization, we share the common goal of relieving suffering among God's children. All of this is part of God's work for his children. I don't think I had anything else to talk about in this article, but I feel like it should be abundantly clear that our church is not trying to support terrorism or Hamas or groups that are against Israel. I would hope that as you watch this presentation, that's pretty clear. We're just trying to serve God's children. If mistakes were made, then they were mistakes, but I can tell you it was not intentional. So again, it would probably be a great idea for Israel365 to reach out to the church and get their side of the story, because some of this may be cleared up. But in any case, I still support them and I hope to continue my relationship with them. There's so much more that I could say. I was going to cover the dedicatory prayer of the Kirtland Temple in 1836. As far as I know, this was the first time that the Lord actually commanded for the Jews to be restored. Like, I mean, commanded in this dispensation since the establishment of the church, 1836. And of all places, it was at the dedication of the first temple built in this dispensation, the Kirtland Temple in Kirtland, Ohio. And here it is right here. I was there for the solar eclipse in 2024. It was an amazing event. Anyway, that's going to be it for this one. I'll talk to you guys later.